Hi, welcome back to Jonesy Chats Wrestling. We're back today. We're going to be discussing last night's Elimination Chamber pay-per-view. I'm joined by my co-host today, none other than Steve. How are you this morning, Steve? Night after, eh?
Yeah, very tired, man, but yeah, good.
Yeah, you stayed up and watched it live. It's pretty hardcore. Obviously, here in the United Kingdom, it's on silly time, so fair play. So we're going to go into obviously the Elimination Chamber, discuss all the stuff coming out of the show. A lot to talk about. It was a very exciting kind of pay-per-view in parts, some good stuff, some not so good stuff. It's not just my wallet that's kind of empty now because of the results, but we'll kind of go into it. So let's go into it. So we'll start off with the kickoff show. There was a couple of bits on the kickoff show to note. There was one sort of spot where they had some talking about sort of who Oscar would face. And they never really followed this up. I just don't get why they said that. I just think it's they're hoping people forgot that Oscar hasn't defended the women's title since Survivor Series. I guess they were. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, it was a bit strange, I mean, especially because the pay-per-view only run for about 2 hours 40. So there wasn't a lot of time frame for Oscar to have a match, but they just ended up not doing it because I was looking at the clock as it got down to sort of like the third, like 2 o'clock here. And it was like, oh, they're putting the chamber match on. I was like, well, I guess Oscar ain't having a match because there's no way she's going to be after this main event or this chamber match. No way.
No, definitely. I think it's interesting to see they didn't defend it. Obviously, it's a shame. They need to really give Oscar some time on TV. But kind of going forward into what happened, we then had a fatal 4-way match. This was to replace Keith Lee, who unfortunately wasn't at the pay-per-view. And this was to get a shot in the triple threat later on the night. So we had Ali from Retribution, John Morrison, Ricochet, Elias. What was your kind of thoughts of this match?
Very, very just like when they started off, and it's literally just one hits another one hits. It's not. It was just literally. It was a time killing match. I mean, there was only one good spot. You had trying to think how it went now. You had Ricochet. Elias had Ricochet in a reverse DDT. Morrison then gets Elias in a reverse DDT. So they've got like a chain going on, and then Ali does this thing where he jumps through the ropes and does a DDT, does a forward roll and jumps in the DDT. So he DDTs Morrison, who then reverse DDTs Elias, who reverse DDTs Ricochet. It was literally like the one good spot in the entire match, but that was it. The finish was bad. I mean, you had Ricochet pulls off the 450. He's on to Ali. Mace and T-Bar pull Ali out the ring. Ricochet does a flip over the ropes. Then the pair of them, they grab Ricochet mid-air, powerbomb with him against the ring post, and then while Ali's standing on the side of the ring, Morrison just comes up and does a roll up from behind through the ropes, and it's the 1-2-3. It was a bad finish.
Yeah, no, I think you made some excellent points there. I think the thing with it is when I saw this match and I saw what was announced, I was excited about seeing Ali, John Morrison, Ricochet. They're all very fantastic wrestlers, all far better in this position on the card they're in. But unfortunately, as you said, this did nothing really to make me want to see this type of match again. I think this is down to numerous times, down to underbooking. All these talents have not been used on TV very much. I can't even remember the last time I saw Ricochet. Ali, it's great to see him there, but he doesn't really get used properly. And this is just a shame. We're going into kind of this pay-per-view now. They've had all week or 2 weeks now to kind of announce that one of these guys are going to be in this triple threat. I know John Morrison obviously got the win for. He's going forward into this match later on the show, but it's just a mess. WWE don't really know what they're doing. It's almost like they threw these people out there just to fill time. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, like I give props to Ricochet and Ali because when those two made their entrances, they carried on their feud that they'd been having months ago when they was on TV. Like Ricochet, obviously, with his whole trying to recruit. Ali with his thing trying to recruit Ricochet into Retribution. But yeah, like give them 2 props. They carried on that story, but it was to no avail because, like I said, I've said to you before, they've 3 of them, Elias, Ricochet, and Ali. None of them had screen time. So when Morrison's in there, I automatically thought Morrison's going to win this because he's the only one that's legitimately good on TV.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's if you put them together on paper, like it would be a pretty good match. But when you put Elias in there, Elias has been relevant for ages. Ever since his feud with Jeff Hardy, he's never kind of recovered, in my opinion. Ricochet, he's another one that would be far up the card if WWE believed in him. John Morrison, fantastic worker. Since he's come back to WWE, he's never really connected for me. And Ali, he's stuck in this stable that are going nowhere. They've got about as much relevance as the Job Squad now. They're kind of, I'm surprised they're on a pay-per-view, to be fair, which is a real shame. He's got some great talent. But that was kind of it for the kickoff show. Have you got anything else you want to add before we get into the main show?
No, there's some small bits to it. You had Billy Kay trying to own Hurt Business. Street Profits confronted Sonya Deville on the pre-show because they will still want their rematch for their titles that they lost. And that was about it, really. There was the only two things to notice from the hour show. Otherwise, the rest of it's all filler and show reels and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. So we started up the pay-per-view. Obviously, it's Elimination Chamber match for the Universal title shot. Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, King Corbin, Uso, Cesaro, and Daniel Bryan. So interesting to see. Obviously, most of this at the start was entrances. It seemed to go on and on. Was it just me, or did the entrances seem to last forever?
It did, and then just for a kicker, just before Bryan and Cesaro come out, they decided to then run a promo again for some reason. It's like, hang on, you've just done a promo before the start of the match.
Yeah.
Why is it you're going to put 4 in and then run another promo before you get the last 2? It was like, you're really trying to kill time here.
Exactly. They're really trying to fill time. Obviously, the match opens up. We've got Cesaro and Daniel Bryan. This first part of the match I thought was really, really good. I thought there was a lot of technical kind of spots. They're really, really kind of good together. I really like to see them two sort of have a singles match down the line. There was a lot of hard-hitting offense. What was your thoughts of the initial lockup between Bryan and Cesaro?
I wanted to see it go 60 minutes.
Yeah.
When they was doing all that mat-based wrestling, I was like, I could legitimately get a 60-man Iron Man match out of these two, and it would be fantastic.
Definitely. We then had obviously King Corbin come out to bring us back down to normality a little bit. He got a load of offense. I was surprised how much offense he got in. He got loads of sort of they're making a big song and dance really about how offensive he was. This then it lends up with kind of the more kind of trading blows. What obviously happens is the countdown clock then goes. We then get Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn doesn't actually want to kind of come out. He actually goes higher in the pod. Funny enough, somebody comes from behind him and actually takes him out the pod, which I thought was quite entertaining. It just shows how flimsy the pod is. What were your thoughts of the match up until this point?
Yeah, it was all right. It was getting there. It was constantly building, but yeah, it was I think Baron Corbin pulls out a deep 6 at one point, and I was sitting there thinking that's such a great move.
Yeah,
wasted on you as a wrestler. Same with my issues with the Blue Thunder Bomb. I think it's a really underpowered move that Sammy does that never gets enough credit. And it was just like, oh, it was mad. But yeah, the whole Sammy in the pod was hilarious because he's obviously trying to fight off Corbin. Daniel Bryan runs up, knees him in the back of the head. He falls into the pod door. And then, as you can see in the bottom right corner, the ref just slowly pulling open the other side of the pod. Cesaro just walks up to him and just ragdolls him around that pod. It was hilarious.
It was hilarious. This obviously leads eventually to Corbin being the first one out. He gets eliminated by Cesaro, which is good. Gives Cesaro the momentum. Obviously, it ends up that Kevin Owens then comes out next. Kevin Owens goes on a bit of a rampage. Sami Zayn tries to convince him to tag because they've got history together, which I thought was clever. It was a great flashback to their previous feuds and stuff. Obviously, Kevin Owens don't believe in that. It carries on. He's kind of on a momentum, and then Kevin Owens eventually does eliminate Sami Zayn. What was your thoughts of Kevin Owens up to this point in the match?
The good thing with this match now is they mic'd up the pods. Yep. So as they come in, they've all gone into separate pods, but as everyone's coming in, you can hear Kevin as clear as day in the pods, and his character work was great. It was just a shame that I don't feel that I don't see a point to him being in the match, to be honest, because he didn't do anything really significant to what I think of. I mean, obviously, you and me said before that we thought Cesaro was going to win, and there was that whole moment where Sammy was climbing up the side of the cage, and then Cesaro's next to him, and then Cesaro hangs off the top of the chamber and just drops Sammy off the side of the cage. It was great, but Kevin didn't have anything like that in this. I couldn't. Like, he had his one moment where Sammy tries to convince him to team up, and then Kevin just ragdolls him around. But say, apart from the one spot with Jay later on, there was not enough. Kevin really didn't do anything this for me.
Yeah, no, I agree. Obviously, we got Jey Uso out as well. What kind of shocked me was the fact that we got Kevin Owens eliminated so quickly. Kevin Owens, obviously, he wasn't going to win it. That's pretty obvious, but he was out there so quickly. The way that he kind of went out, it was a bit limp. Ultimately, Jey Uso was slamming the door on Kevin's arm, and he kind of got pinned. So it's a big pinfall for Jey Uso. I think off topic, this is going to go to Jey Uso, Kevin Owens. I think this is a start of a singles feud, probably at Fastlane or WrestleMania. Are you excited for that kind of match if it happens?
Yeah, because I know what Kevin can do in a ring, and I know what Jay can do in a match. Like I said, Jay's part from, let's say, one of the better tag team, part of one of the better tag teams is currently on the roster at the minute. And Kevin's just always been Kevin, so you know that you put the two of them together, and it should be a fairly good match. And plus, there's already a backstory in there that Jay's cost Kevin the title, many opportunities and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. we then have a massive kind of shock. Cesaro does get eliminated. Cesaro obviously out of the match, which was kind of a shock. I couldn't believe it. There goes my bet. So I was well annoyed. But I think the thing is, obviously, Cesaro's out there and he's eliminated by Jey Uso. Massive win for Jey Uso, getting that pinfall over Cesaro with a frog splash. This then leads Daniel Bryan and Jey Uso. So an unlikely final two, interesting kind of way. And then obviously Jey Uso picks up the win. What was your kind of thoughts of this first match at this point?
Really good, really well built. There's a great moment just before Cesaro is eliminated where he has Daniel Bryan in a single leg big swing to obviously try and work on that knee that he injured at the start of the match. Really shocked that Jey picked up the pinfall on Cesaro. I was like, I wouldn't have seen that coming. I would have thought that maybe because we thought Cesaro was going to win, I would have seen Jey pin Daniel. But then I sat there and thought, oh well, Daniel's been milking this knee injury. This is probably going to be the reason why he loses after he wins the chamber match at this point. Yeah,
definitely. I think it was interesting to see that they were the final two. I kind of knew it'd be a face and a heel. I thought we'd get like that in the final two as a dynamic, but the fact it wasn't Cesaro, Daniel Bryan. Interesting. I know that obviously they want to do this whole feel-good factor, but obviously Daniel Bryan getting the win for here. And what was interesting enough is this world title shot for the Universal title is next. So it's not later in the night, it's straight away. So obviously Roman comes out. Roman basically comes out. It looks like he's going to basically he's going to tap out. He's placed in the yes lock. Next thing you know, Roman instantly kind of regains the heat and he then basically does the guillotine choke. He taps out. So the match is a squash match. It's kind of 5 minutes. What were your thoughts of this match?
I like the whole spear into the yes lock. Like he obviously gave you that there's a possibility Daniel Bryan could win this, but it was sort of self-explanatory. You knew Roman was going to come out and win. Like I'd have liked to have seen Daniel win the match, but you always knew Roman was going to win this.
Yeah, you did. I think the thing with it is whoever it was lambs to slaughter to a certain point. They'd never built up anybody. The intention was just to do a match. Obviously, after the match, Roman's standing tall. We then get Edge come out. Edge comes out and does a spear. This clearly creates the fact that we're going to have Edge versus Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 37. Long overdue. Obviously, we've been saying that a few weeks on the podcast. This is the match. Glad to see it come to fruition now. And I thought it was a great spot. It's great to see Roman sort of looking up at Edge a little bit. You're further creating the chance that Edge may be the one to finally beat Roman Reigns. What was your thoughts of this moment?
My only issue is Michael Cole at these points because obviously you get Edge come out, he spears Roman, and Michael Cole instantly. He is as if he already knew, as if Edge told him before he'd done what he did that he was going to say he was going to face Roman at WrestleMania, and it was like Michael Cole just adds a slight irritability factor to this, but otherwise, it does what it needs to do. It just confirms what we all kind of knew was going to happen anyway. Yeah, I agree.
I think the commentators can be a bit sort of poor in parts, and it's certainly not Jim Ross or anybody like that these days. They're not as good as that. I couldn't say anything like that, unfortunately. But at least we know kind of one of the main events now, WrestleMania. Are you excited for Edge and Roman?
Yeah, like I said, I've watched Edge for years, so I know what he's capable of, and I think if anyone can get a decent match out of Roman that's going to last longer than sort of 2.5 minutes, I reckon it could be Edge.
Yeah, definitely. I think it'll be interesting. It'll be really a real close call to see who's going to win. No idea at the moment who's actually going to win. I'm looking forward to this match at WrestleMania. I think they're going to do a great job of building that up. I think they can particularly use people such as Christian and that return. Obviously, at the Royal Rumble stuff, I think they can use him certainly in this feud in some element. I'd like to see Roman kind of bully Christian a little bit to get to Edge. Would you be a fan of that?
So I've always been a fan of Christian as well, and say it'll be nice to see him back in the ring as well, and for it to all tie in and come full circle. Because I think the thing is as well is it's kind of an early prediction that Edge is going to win because I think it's the 10th anniversary since he officially last was at WrestleMania and beat Del Rio.
Wow, as long as that time goes quick.
Yeah, I think it's exactly 10 years to the day, I think, or 11 years to the day when he actually dropped his last Mania.
Wow, I can't believe it's that long, but that's a good omen. It'll be interesting to see what happens. We then obviously had Bad Bunny backstage with The Miz. This was just a kind of spot to set up the 24/7 title, being on camera with Bad Bunny. It ends up with Bad Bunny slapping The Miz in the mouth. Damien Priest is there on a cameo. What were your thoughts of this little segment?
It was a good slap. But again, that was about it. It's just leading to what's going to happen in the future, really.
I agree with you. I think you're spot on. I think the thing is, this is obviously going to be a WrestleMania tag match, I believe. That's kind of the way that the vibe I'm getting from it. I don't know, sort of, obviously what will happen. Obviously, Damian Priest was on camera. Do you think it was a missed spot here that they didn't have Damian Priest actually on the pay per view in an in-ring capacity? For me, I think they missed that up. They've been building him up for weeks now. He should be on the pay per view a little bit.
So the thing is, without because he's always faced he faced Miz previously, and I think it was Miz he faced on Raw, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I can't. Yeah, it would have nice to have seen him on the pay per view, but for what they would have given him, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't have said, like, there wouldn't be nothing to get him on the show. Do you know what I mean? I couldn't see
you
the
just
match.
Want to give him a winning. You just want to give him a match though, like just continue the winning run. That's all, because he's yet to, besides the Royal Rumble, he's yet to be on a WWE pay per view. If that makes sense, I just think you're carrying on the run. That's all. But no, definitely interesting. Have you got anything else you want to add before we go to the United States title?
No, straight into the United States, mate.
Okay, so defending champion Bobby Lashley against John Morrison and Riddle. This match was entertaining in parts. There was a lot of double teaming against sort of Lashley, and unbelievably, obviously, what happens is a crutch appears, and then from nowhere, Riddle kind of takes out Lashley. He then obviously takes out Morrison, and Riddle's your new United States champion. For me, I am shocked. I think this is the biggest shock since Undertaker lost at WrestleMania. I cannot believe that Riddle's your new United States champion. This is a guy, obviously, that's been unable really to kind of get windfalls. Like, sort of, if you look at it sort of previously, he wasn't able to beat Keith Lee when he had the chance. His only wins have been over MVP and stuff. We did have a fluke win over Lashley. And I'm shocked, but the fact that it wasn't Lashley getting pinned, I'm kind of okay with that. Did you see this match happening? Did you see this shock happening?
I only once Morrison was confirmed for the match, because I sat there and thought that if Keith Lee had been in it, this same finish I wouldn't have believed. Especially with the crutch, because MVP is the one that brings the crutch down, and you can kind of see it. You're like, well, that's a bit of a random thing for MVP to be using or to be trying to sell. And yeah, it's just to say, as soon as Morrison was put into this match, I was like, this is Riddle winning this. This is WWE's excuse of getting out of Lashley losing the title without having to actually take a pinfall.
I agree. I think it was kind of a shock. I think the fact that they've had Lashley with that belt, they've been at the point where he's been so over they can't beat him, which is unfortunate. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what Riddle does. They've got one thing for sure with Riddle as United States title. They've got to start building him. This guy, since he came up from NXT, has been treated like a joke. He's been a totally utterly booked, like 24/7 fodder. He's not really had any momentum, really. Although he's getting these odd wins here. Like, we look back here, he's kind of had wins previously over people such as Shelton Benjamin, Cedric Alexander. You know what I mean? He's really got to sort of continue the win streak. I'd like to see him have a decent run. And for me, he's a really good in-ring competitor. So I'm quite happy he's United States title. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, it's nice to see him actually win the title. Like I said, it would be nice to see it under a more sort of legitimate circumstances rather than just pinning a third person in the match. But in ring's fine. I just think he needs to cut out this bro gimmick. Like, don't get me wrong, it's who he is, but he needs to cut out the goofy backstage segments if he wants to be taken more seriously.
I think I've got one kind of complaint. If we look at the booking of Riddle kind of in the last month, like sort of continually, all he's doing is getting these fluke sort of cheap shots over Lashley and just getting destroyed. It would have been far better if he had a bit more credibility, if he wouldn't have been getting destroyed every single week. I would embrace it a lot more, but it's only a small thing. I'm hoping he's going to have a decent run, and I think Riddle and John Morrison, if there is room for a rematch, maybe tonight on Raw, I'd like to see that. Would you? Yeah,
that'd be a good match. Especially with Riddle's athletic abilities and what John Morrison can do. Yeah, it would be good.
Definitely. I really think, my last kind of thing I was going to say on this subject, I really think you can sort of build a United States division really around people such as Ricochet, Ali, Riddle. I think you could do some great work if they allow that. Because I remember sort of back in the 90s, particularly late 90s, the Intercontinental title division where you had people such as Jericho and you had Kurt Angle and that lot. I think they really need to start getting a roster of these middle of the road wrestlers, or middle of the card wrestlers, not middle of the road, middle of the card wrestlers, and they can have rematch after rematch or decent match after decent match. Would you be a fan of that?
Yeah, man. I remember the days of like Jericho and Benoit doing their like best of sevens and like having some of the best matches you could possibly imagine. But the problem is making these wrestlers look legitimate, because everyone knows Ricochet is a great wrestler, but to actually get him on TV and wrestling is next to impossible at the minute.
I think it's his size. I think the problem is ever since he lost to Brock Lesnar, going on a different tangent now, he's never really ever recovered. Just Vince doesn't buy his size is small. He looks at him as a cruiserweight, which is the wrong way. Because this guy, for me, putting it out there, if Ricochet was booked properly, he could be a world champion. He's that good. He's good enough to be a world champion. I can't believe I'm saying that, but he's definitely.
I think with Ricochet, I think like you can see it sometimes in his style when he wrestles. And obviously with Vince being Vince, Vince is very old school, and I don't think he's into the way that Ricochet wrestles, which is I reckon could be one of the reasons why he doesn't get booked as strong. Because
Yeah,
everyone knows that he's a great wrestler. Everyone knows his mic work is great, but unfortunately, when you've got Vince McMahon at the head of running the business, then you ain't got a chance.
definitely, I agree. We've got this women's tag team championship. So we've got Nia Jax, Shayna Baszler facing Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks. This was an okay match. There was a lot of kind of near falls. It ends up at the end. We get Reginald coming out following his cameo on SmackDown this past week. Comes out with like a wine bottle. It looks like he's going to distract kind of or give it to Sasha to use. Sasha refuses to use it. Then Sasha ends up kind of getting pinned. Sasha then demands Reginald leaves and goes back to kind of Carmella. What were your thoughts this match?
One thing that really irritates me that I need to drop is these pre-match interviews in gorilla position, because I'm just like, why you could have done this interview earlier and it would have been more effective, but you're really just delaying the process here. But yeah, it was fine. Sasha and Bianca, I've sat there and thought that they could be a dominant tag team in the future if they was to ever team up. My only other issue is that for some reason, like whenever you put someone like Nia Jax, who is a larger athlete, the larger athletes still never dominate. Like you get Sasha and Bianca in these matches, and they seem to dominate Nia Jax, and it's like, does a powerhouse not have an effect anymore on the smaller athletes?
Interesting analysis. I think the thing with it is clearly Sasha and Bianca are your money makers. They're the ones that are going to build WrestleMania around. I think that's maybe sort of, but I do agree. Nia should have more offense. I think for me, I've got two kind of concerns / complaints a little bit. The first one would be they seem to be more focused about getting Reginald on camera than this sort of match between Sasha and Bianca. For me, Reginald seems to be the focus at the moment, which is I don't really know where it's going, considering he's not going to do any offense against any women based on what we've seen previously. It's a waste of time for me. And when we look at this, I think they didn't do anything here really to tease this Sasha Banks Bianca feud. There was no further elevation of that. It wasn't like they lost the match after and they're angry at each other. It was just almost like this was a match for me. As I said on my SmackDown review, they shouldn't have been booking this match. I think this match, it's a waste of time. You're just putting a match together for no reason. I think the right people won, even though the women's champion got pinned. I think the right people won.
Yeah.
And I just think it was a bit disappointing for me. It really didn't connect on a lot of levels. You got anything else you want to?
Yeah, I mean, my only highlight was Shayna with some great joint manipulation during the match. Yeah. That was it. So she had Sasha tied up for ages, and it was probably the highlight of the match. Otherwise, the rest of the match I could have done without, really.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, as I said, I think they made the right decision with the Women's Tag Team Champions retaining. They've been booked so badly recently, so it was the right move. Clearly, they're going to go on to NXT now, where they're going to face Dakota Kai, Raquel Gonzalez. I think that'll be a great match. That's probably the time where you're going to need to switch the belt for me. I think the whole Raquel Gonzalez, Nia Jax thing is going to be something fun to see. Changing the subject slightly, but I thought it was okay. But I really hope, based on this kind of loss now, we're going to get this big build up to this match that's going to happen at WrestleMania between Bianca and Sasha, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully.
Definitely. We're now going to kind of go into the main event then. So this is WWE Championship Elimination Chamber match. Drew McIntyre, AJ Styles, Kofi Kingston, Sheamus, Jeff Hardy, Randy Orton. So obviously this is the 28th Elimination Chamber match ever. I could not believe there's been that many. When we look at this, the show obviously starts up. We've got Jeff Hardy and kind of Randy Orton basically there as well, going into the pods. Drew McIntyre's there as well. And interesting enough, obviously, AJ Styles is there with us. What were your thoughts of kind of these competitors going into this match?
Well, the problem was I think everyone knew what the outcome of this match was going to be. So I would have found it hard to have believed anyone else winning this match apart from Drew, especially this close to Mania.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I think he was obviously the favourite kind of going in. They hadn't really built up a juxtaposed opponent, somebody of equal level, I think, definitely.
Yeah.
Obviously, we then have the sort of Elimination Chamber starting off. We've got Randy Orton and Jeff Hardy. This was okay. It was kind of did what it needed to do. It's very filler just until the pod opened up. We then obviously had Drew come out. Drew then comes out and delivers a DDT from nowhere. We then get Orton kind of trading like moves with Drew. Kofi then turns up. Interesting enough, AJ Styles, basically his entrance was him coming out the pod was almost ripping the door, which made it look like it was from Poundland or something. I just thought it looked really amateur and cheap. What were your thoughts of the match at this point?
Yeah, I mean, you had when Jeff and Randy started off, I was just like, this is a typical Randy Jeff Hardy match, nothing
Yeah,
special. Would like to have seen Randy go back to his old ways of like, when he had the screwdriver and Jeff's ear, do
yeah,
that kind of stuff because
yeah.
it would have made it more interesting while you sort of waiting that 5 minutes for the second entrant. Yeah, Drew comes out, just starts dominating. Nothing really special, and obviously then Kofi comes out. He gets obviously the shock roll up pin on Randy Orton after 2 minutes. Randy goes on his RKO spree, and yeah, almost. But the worst part about it was the pod that AJ broke out of. It actually broke earlier on in the first chamber match.
Yeah, yeah.
So you have Omos breaking a chamber pod match to make him look strong, or whatever. It's like, yeah, that just broke earlier in the night, so it's nothing special. And and then obviously AJ just makes his way into the ring, try and take advantage of Randy's RKO session.
Forgive my kind of language here, but the minute when Randy Orton was eliminated by this way, because we didn't have any Fiend and the way it was done, Kofi Kingston has been relevant for ages. What the fuck is he doing eliminating Randy Orton? It's just, was it just like they don't think about what they're doing? It's just so amateurish. It's almost like, who's the booker here? You know what I mean? It's just,
Almost as if the Fiend wasn't available.
I thought the whole point of these flimsy pods was really to get the Fiend in, to take out Orton. And in fact, we didn't get that. There was no mention of Alexa. Exactly. What the fuck have they been building on Raw for the last few weeks? This elimination of Orton beared no relevance. Forgive my language, Steve, but it beared no relevance on what we've been watching week by week for 3 hours at a time.
Yeah, exactly. Because now what's Randy going to come out and do? Sit there and say, well, Kofi Kingston, you cost me a shot, blah, blah, blah. And now the Fiend's going to turn up? It's pointless.
I just think it's disappointing, really.
Yeah, they've missed a step there with that one.
Definitely. Obviously, going on to the rest of the match. So obviously the rest of the match, there's a lot of kind of near falls and stuff like that as well. We obviously do get sort of the final two ending up being kind of AJ Styles and Drew. Another kind of thing I've got to say before this, obviously we got Sheamus basically getting eliminated here. Sheamus basically getting eliminated by AJ Styles. What the hell is that about? They've been building Sheamus and Drew for weeks now. They want to have potentially another match at Fastlane. This elimination here was another one that where I was dumbfounded and I couldn't believe what I was watching. I just think, do they not realize what they're doing every single week? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense from what they were trying to do. Like, you sit there and watch it, and you're just like, okay, yeah, fine. It's gonna be Sheamus and Drew as the final two, and all of a sudden you see Sheamus get pinned, and you're like, yeah, okay. Then this sort of again, what have they been doing on Raw? It's the same thing again. Why have you been sitting there building up this feud constantly between Sheamus and Drew? But then there's no payoff for it at the Chamber. There's just like you've just squashed it instantly.
I think the thing with it is because we're going to be expected to probably have to see this at a rematch, probably, maybe, potentially, I would guess, down the line. But I was disappointed. I just think it's sort of when it was AJ Styles and Drew, my hopes of a title change or anything at that point were just totally dashed. I thought it's AJ Styles never going to beat Drew McIntyre. Obviously, they're meeting at TLC. Drew destroyed AJ Styles, even though it's from an in-ring perspective, it's probably better AJ versus Drew. But just a strange way of eliminations. I couldn't figure it out. It was just really weird. I never would have seen it coming, to be fair.
Yeah. Like I said, I think it was more building to sort of what happened after the match rather than what was going on in it.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously Drew does pick up the pinfall. He gets the Claymore 1, 2, 3. After the match, this was really, really good. I really enjoyed this. We had Bobby Lashley come out and attack Drew. At long last, they've got Bobby Lashley finally going after the world title again. Obviously, Bobby Lashley, besides sort of Drew McIntyre, Roman Reigns, is the most protected wrestler in WWE. You've been building for months. This guy here, he comes out, he totally utterly destroys Drew. It makes it look like he's got his intentions set on challenging for the world title. And I thought it was a really, really kind of good move, considering Drew kind of beat Lashley back in Backlash back at June. I forgot that. I totally forgot about that. The way they've dominated with Lashley and stuff. I think this is this was great. If this is going to lead to him getting a world title match, I was a massive fan of him destroying Drew. What was your thoughts?
Yeah, my only issue was obviously how it all ended afterwards. But say because in the Chamber you had Drew kicking out of anything and everything. But yeah, Lashley's finally should be where he should be, and that is at the top of the card. So for him to come out and how it's going to play out with the Miz going forward will be interesting. It's the only thing that's really interesting to watch Raw for, because they've squashed everything else in one pay-per-view.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think sort of going into what happens next. So obviously Drew's there, he's selling. Then the Miz comes out and cashes Money in the Bank. He finally cashes it in. The Miz obviously executes a move. He does a big move, pins him. Drew kicks out, and you're thinking, oh, he's not going to win. Miz then does skull crashing finale and gets the pinfall. So we've got a new world champion. The person behind me, I cannot believe it. The Miz is the world champion again. And if we look at kind of the Miz, then the Miz, this is a guy that hasn't won a singles match on Raw this year as a singles wrestler. This is your world champion now. It's just crazy. I was excited to see the belt off Drew, but the building of the Miz with the Money in the Bank briefcase, it makes it look like it's almost like they've given a sort of an opener of the world title. That's the way I feel. I feel like your world title is like just really sort of worth a sack of shit now. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, like I said to you before, Drew was kicking out of anything and everything, and then the skull crushing finale, which is one of the weakest finishers in the business. He does a DDT in the skull crushing finale, and that's it. He gets the pin. I would like to have seen him use that briefcase. Maybe take a briefcase shot to Drew just to make it a bit more legitimate to win the title. Because I say 2 moves after, say, Drew's kicked out of everything. Yeah, right, he's just been ragdolled around by Lashley. But yeah, I say it's just not a believable finish. But like I said, maybe long overdue because Miz has deserved a second title reign at the top. But I just would have preferred it to have gone down a bit more with, say, like I said, a briefcase shot or something like that.
I just think the thing is, I think I get it. They were saying that he'd been in a Raw Elimination Chamber match and they had to kind of change things up. But for me, it was fun. It was high octane. It was insane. There's a lot of talking points of it. But when I look at the Miz, I don't want to kind of repeat myself. I look at the Miz. This guy hasn't won a match in a singles capacity since back at Hell in a Cell, where he got the briefcase back off Otis. And this is the guy that's now your world champion. And it's just if it's for one night only, fine. But for me, clearly the Miz isn't going to be your main event at WrestleMania. It wouldn't surprise me if they do a rematch tonight on Raw and he drops the belt to Drew again. I just sort of, by the time this was done, I just could not believe I don't think it really achieved anything. I think the cash-in was done because we've seen this fake cash-in and the build of the Money in the Bank champion be so weak over the past 12 months. It's just not believable for me, really.
It's a prop that they seem to have ruined. Like the Money in the Bank is one of the best things that, like, it's essentially put Money in the Bank into their top 5 pay-per-views. But yet every year they seem to just botch these cash-ins. As I say, you had like a women's one last year, which was what cashed in quickly after the pay-per-view. Like there was no build to it. There was just literally, oh, you got it. And so it's happened previously before. Alexa Bliss has cashed in like on the same night. Kane's done it as well. And it's like this thing is one of the reasons. This thing should terrify whoever the champion is for 12 whole months until they actually cash it in. But every year they just seem to be getting worse and worse with booking the Money in the Bank.
I agree with you. I think the thing is, obviously last year giving it to Otis, then backtracked on that. Whoever they're going to give it to in 2021, they have to stick the course. They have to make it somebody that they want to see with the belt at the end of it, because obviously that's the whole reason of it. But as the pay-per-view ends, obviously Miz is champion. Lots of talking points of that. Raw tomorrow night is going to be exciting. Looking forward to seeing how they get themselves out of this. And have you got any kind of final thoughts before we kind of end the show today?
No, I say I probably could have done without staying up to watch it. As I said to you before, it was
dedication.
It was only there's only 2 matches worth watching, and again, a lot of it was mainly high spots. But yeah, it is what it is. And so at least like some good things have come out of it, just to see Lashley back at the top of the card, and so hopefully see him with the belt at some point. Then it'd be him versus Drew at Mania. I
really hope he beats Drew at Mania. That's what I want to see. I'd love to see Mania go off with Lashley beat Drew. I can't see it. I think Lashley will unfortunately lose to Drew, but I'd really like to see Lashley win because I think they could do some great work with him. The way they built him, that's how you build wrestlers. If they could do similar record with a lot of with 4 or 5 wrestlers in the card, by the time we get to 2022, we'll have a decent roster of wrestlers ready to challenge for the world title a little bit.
Yeah.
Definitely. This has been Jonesy Chats Wrestling. Got to give a special shout out before I forget. Special shout out to regular viewer Chris O'Connor. Hope you're well, mate. And yeah, appreciate you coming on, Steve. Thank you for your time again.
No problem,
and
man.
yeah, it's been Jonesy Chats Wrestling. We're chatting about the Elimination Chamber. If you've liked the video, please leave a comment below. Please give us a thumbs up, and also please subscribe. Really appreciate you watching. And yeah, thank you for your time. Have a good day.